Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Art of Photography. My name is Ted Forbes. Today we're going to continue on in our Building a Website series. And I want to take things in a little bit different order than maybe you normally do when building a website. Last time we talked, more or less about building a website, what it is you want to achieve. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of like picking work for your portfolio or what you want to see in there, I want to take a step back a little bit and I want to talk about a little bit of search engine optimization and traffic sources in particular, because I think, typically when you design a website, you kind of go in stages of, with photography, putting your work together, putting your portfolio together, doing the design, getting it up, getting it going. And that's all well and good, but then usually people worry about the marketing and the search engine stuff later. We're going to take this a little bit out of order and do it now. And I want to show you some tools you can use for analytics and some things you can do to set this up, to start making kind of an awareness of what it is that you want to do with your website and who you want to be seeing it. And I know that, we reach a broad range of people on this podcast. Some of you guys probably want to do it for, career purposes. Perhaps you are a wedding photographer, perhaps you do product work, location work, something like that. And so your audience is probably going to be potential customers, potential clients. Whereas somebody who's building a website just to get their work out there and learn and kind of join in the conversation, it might be a little bit different. But no matter what it is that your focus is, no pun intended, or what your desire, your need is for your website, I think it's really important to, let's take a step back. Before we build it, let's consider what we're going to be building it for, who that is, and what you're going to be doing with that. We're also going to talk a little bit about linking today, because I think this is really important as well. Essentially, the internet, if this isn't obvious, is based on a network of links. Things link up to each other. Google, it's speculated very heavily that a lot of their emphasis on search ranking is based on the types of backlinks you have, the types of quality stuff, because basically, you think of something like Google, it's a robot, right? And this robot is trying to come up with the best quality it can. So it has that based on a number of criteria. It's obviously a robot and not a person. And so generally, backlinking all plays into this algorithm that they have of basically being able to determine authority and quality on stuff. So I want to look at that today. We're going to look a little bit into what comprises that and some tools you can use. So anyway, come on over and let's talk about marketing and traffic strategy. Okay, so I'm going to show you some tools and some services online that you can use, because we're talking today about getting traffic to your website and getting some analytics around that. And even though, I mentioned we're taking this out of order, this is really important to start looking at now, because it starts shaping the kinds of content you want to do with your website, the kinds of ways you want to market it, and the things you want to do with it. And the first tool, and this is probably one of the most important, it's also free, which is really nice, is Google Analytics. And if you're not familiar with Google Analytics, it's a service that Google provides that basically tracks visits on your website. And it tells you where people are coming from, how they're finding your website, how many people are viewing it, all that sorts of good stuff. So links will be in the show notes, but it's google.com/analytics. Use your Google ID and go ahead and sign up. The account is free. And it basically, when you set up a website in here, for each website that you set up, it gives you a piece of tracking code. That tracking code goes on your website and it starts collecting information about your visits and people visiting the website. And so I'll kind of give you an overview of this. What we're looking at right here, this is the artofphotography.tv Google Analytics. And, obviously this is the show's website. And I can see right here when I go into the beginning page here, how many visits I'm getting a day. When I roll over these, we're looking at a snapshot for the last month. And you can see, when I'm having my biggest traffic days and, what maybe the slowest are. I come out with episodes every Sunday, so typically that's where the peaks are. So, right off the bat, right there, when I see these spikes, one thing you notice is consistent release of content. When people know when you have new stuff on your website, that's a content driver, and it's really important to keep people coming back to do that. So, you can see little ebbs and flows of what's going on there. As I scroll down, you're going to see unique visits, page views, visit duration, all those kinds of things. And those are really important. You want to know how people are interacting with your website. The other cool thing is if I go under standard reports and I click on real time and I select overview, I can see that right now there are 5 people on the website. This is a live snapshot of what's on the website right now. I can see on this little map where in the world they are located. I can see what pages they are visiting. The last couple minutes of activity you can check out on here. And also down here, you see where it says top keywords. Sometimes it's anonymous information, and it's not provided. There were 3 search terms. They're not telling me what they are, but Anyway, best Nikon F4 model somebody searched. And so you can start to see what people are searching for and that they're hitting your website with. And of course, this is Google traffic that's coming through. So it's all driven by search. Now, search is good traffic to get. It's particularly challenging with photography-based websites because it's a lot of images. So as you can see already, when you're getting into search terms and stuff, you know, if I go to traffic sources, for instance, and let's go to sources, let's say search, and I'm going to say organic, and it's going to give me a list of what people have been using for search terms. Now, obviously, this means you need to have text on your website, which is important to consider. How you write about your own work. It's important to just have more than just images up, because once you do get indexed into search, you want people to be able to find that website. And, you know, even if it's just describing behind the scenes on your photos or how maybe the photos were made or tell a story about the photo, but it is important to have text on the website. And especially if you are wanting a lot of traffic to come from Google searches. Now, Google search is obviously a wonderful source of traffic and people visiting your website, but it is not the only one. And think of it this way, like let's say you're a wedding photographer. Okay, you want to be able to get people to search for, you know, wedding photographers and be able to, you know, have it. But the competition on that is so high. It is important to also realize other sources of traffic that are going to come to your website. For instance, things like Facebook, or maybe a link from a wedding planner website or something like that. And the kinds of traffic that you're going to get from something like that, whatever your niche is that you do as a photographer, it's almost more valuable than just a generic Google search, especially if you have a service-based thing like, you know, you're a product photographer, you're a wedding photographer, or maybe you do events, something like that. The kinds of traffic you're going to get from a really high-quality website, you know, maybe more important than search. And it's important too, and also Google will go down here and you can actually go under social and you can kind of see overview, landing pages, etc., trackbacks of what social activity is going to be. So if I go through here, and I don't really have this configured yet, but, you know, YouTube's a big one for this website. StumbleUpon, Facebook, Flickr, Twitter, all the stuff you would expect. It's important, you know, to think, where do you want your traffic to come from? What is the most valuable to you? One other thing I want to say with Google and Google Analytics and all this stuff is when we start getting into analytics, we get into numbers. And it's very important to realize that numbers can be deceiving. You don't need millions of hits a day to have a successful website or be a successful photographer. It's not about the volume of numbers, it's about the quality of those numbers. So that's something to just consider. Another tool I want to tell you about that we'll come back to in a second, to analytics. But this is, if you go to Moz.com, M-O-Z.com, Moz is basically a service, and there's free versions and there's paid versions. You can just do it with the free version to do what we're talking about today. But they offer a number of tools that you can use to monitor and analyze the traffic and what your website is doing. And one of those tools that they offer is called Open Site Explorer. And what this does is it allows you to go in and put in the URL of any site you want to look at, and we'll look at one in a second, and analyze what the backlinking structure is for that website. And let's back up a second before we get into all these technical terms. One of the websites we looked at last time was Steve McCurry. Now, Steve McCurry obviously is a very, very successful photographer. He's been around for years. He's shot for National Geographic. He has some just very iconic stuff. So he is a huge name. And I want to look at, you know, what influences his website in search engines, you know, basically on the web. Now, for most of you, you know, everybody who's been on the internet, you understand that the internet works by linking. And so that's how we get from one website to the next, is through links. And, you know, even if you start with Google, you put in a search term and Google provides you links. I might be on the National Geographic website and there would be a link to Steve McCurry's work from there. And so linking is very important with what you're doing on the web. Now, if you use Open Site Explorer, and I've already pulled this up, if you type in stevemccurry.com, what we can do is we can analyze some of the linking structure for that website. And bear with me here because I want to show you why we're looking at this, because this can influence how you market your stuff. If I go on the top over to a thing called linking domains over here, it's going to give me a bunch of information about the stuff that links to stevemccurry.com. And like, first of all, one of the things you're going to see is wikipedia.org. And then in the next column, you see what's called domain authority and how many linking root domains. So basically what this means is Steve McCurry, I'm sure, has a page on Wikipedia that links here. The domain authority on a scale of 1 to 100 is 100. Wikipedia ranks very high in domain authority, and these are the standards that Moz sets up. there are 3 million sites that link to Wikipedia. So you're able to see kind of how that structure works. And, all this with a grain of salt. The important thing here are what are the linking root domains that are coming in and the domain authority of those domains, because that influences Steve McCurry's search results, and it gives you a snapshot of the quality of the stuff that's linking to him. So obviously things like adobe.com, bbc.co.uk, there's links that you can get that are easier than others. It's very difficult to convince Huffington Post to write an article about you, but that's the kind of stuff that's linking here. Now, so don't just look at the big ones and call it a day. Because they're difficult. What you want to do is look at the stuff that may be a little more attainable, and we're going to come right back to that. Real quick, you'll see that the domain authority, they're only giving me the top 5 here. That's because I do not have the pro account, but it's still useful. So anyway, if I go down here, you're going to see Smashing Magazine, New Yorker, Gizmodo, Storify, Squarespace.com, etc. If I go through these, you're going to find a couple that maybe you do have an opportunity to be featured on their website. And maybe you could write an article for somebody like that, or maybe you can just use that when you send emails out trying to promote your own website. There's stuff that is a little more attainable, but it also shows you, who's linking around. And so if you see something on here that maybe you feel like you have a crack at, maybe it's worth, getting your portfolio together, sending them an email and saying, hey, I just want to show you my work. Here's my portfolio. Anyway, it's a matter of finding out who controls those websites or who does those edits and start to market yourself in that direction. And I just use Steve McCurry as an example. I mean, obviously he's really big, but, you could use other people. You could find your competitors and find out who's backlinking to them, and then start making that part of your promotional plan. And, this is a lot of work, but I think these two tools, being able to use Google Analytics to analyze traffic of where it's coming from, and then using something like Open Site Explorer where you want to go in and find out potentially from competitors or other photographers, where their web traffic is coming from, then it gives you more information when you are going to do marketing and promotion to your own website. And I think the other big takeaway here too, and we talked about this briefly, was it also shows you how invaluable search is, how invaluable, things like Facebook, social media, Twitter, those are. And as you can see, getting eyes on a website is not just throwing up a page and, praying for rain. It's about putting up something that, is targeted towards a specific audience, making sure that the information is there and it's useful. And, if you're just a hobbyist photographer, what kind of traffic do you want? Or maybe you're a professional photographer, what kind of traffic do you want on that? Realizing the web is based on backlinking and linking in general, and how you can do that. Another thing that I think it's important to consider here is, don't look at this as how can I game this system to work for me. Look at it as, spelling the logic out of how the internet works. And, something like Open Site Explorer, or maybe you're looking at a photographer's website. What kind of links are there? What kind of authority do they have as authors of the internet? What kind of stuff are they sharing? Does a website have a blog that's useful? Does it have, behind the scenes information on photographs, for instance? What is useful on there that Google would be encouraged to want to index? And I think that's when you're going to start seeing some really good results. You also have to be patient. This stuff takes time, which is the other reason that I want to show you this before we get into actually picking work and designing the website. Ultimately, the end result is we want to have people looking at our website. So how do we start to tailor that information to look at that? So, in the next podcast, we're going to talk about, in the next episode, we're going to talk about selecting your work for your portfolio, what kinds of stuff needs to go in there. So it's important to realize that, hey, there are eyeballs on the website, and in the end, that's what we want. So that's why this is important. And when you start selecting work for your website, you're going to look at that in a different view too. So, what you want to do is think right now, what do I want to do with my website? Go ahead and set up some reporting. We can add it later if you haven't built your website yet, or if you already have a website, you want to get that in there and be able to start to track this information. And it all works together. It's a holistic view of what we want all this stuff to do. And that's how you get a website to be successful. So anyway, I know this is a broad overview. There's a lot more to search engine optimization. There's a lot more to search. There's a lot more to
all this stuff, and I can't really even cover it in one episode. So we'll hit back on this from time to time. But I wanted to give you an overview today and a couple tools that you could use to hopefully help assist in this. So anyway, I hope you found that useful. And once again, I will have links in the show notes, but we're looking mainly at Google Analytics today and also the Moz Open Site Explorer.
Okay, so that's just, a few words on SEO, a few words on marketing, and a few words on getting your website out there and getting eyeballs on it. Obviously, this is a way broader topic than I can mash into the short videos that I do once a week, but I thought it was too big a subject to ignore. Typically what I see a lot of times is photographers who don't have that direction in what it is that they're trying to do. So putting a website up and just expecting, like throwing it in water and expecting to catch fish, it's not going to work that way. And if you want to have a successful website, if you want to get your work out there and you want to be seen, you're going to have to follow some of these things. And the other reason I thought it was particularly important to talk about on here is because I think imaging-based websites are difficult. Images on their own, and of course, the search engines are improving all the time with image recognition, but on their own, they do not convey as much as text does in terms of what is searchable by humans or the Googlebot. And I think this is a real important point because, sometimes just having images on a website isn't enough. You need to be able to write a little bit and be able to talk about your work a little bit. We're going to come back around to some of the social media stuff later on. We need to get back into photography next week, and I want to get into actually choosing work for a portfolio and what goes into that and some things to think about. So we'll come back around. But I think social media, on the other hand, is very friendly towards photography. When you have things like Instagram or Facebook or even Twitter that actually are able to get an image out for people to see, that's really important too. So social media strategy is a big one too. This seems a little all over the place today. And it's less focused because I want you to start thinking about these things. I think that's the most important thing right now. You don't have to have all the answers down, but at least get it in your mind because it really helps when you're actually developing your website and when you're actually putting work into your portfolio, when you're thinking in terms of who is it that I want to see this work, what is it going to convey when I put it out there, and how are people going to find it? And those are the big question marks that, they're difficult, and that's the hard part. But we're going to work on it, and I will see you guys more next time. So once again, everybody, this has been The Art of Photography. Thank you for watching. I'll see you.